5 words. No threat, no weapon. But they froze every woman in the room. Share your blanket with him. It's January 1945, Belgium. A drafty wooden barracks stinking of diesel and wet wool. The air burns their throats. Frost crusts the windows like spiderwebs. The women, 40 German clerks and nurses captured outside Aachen, are lined against the wall, hands trembling under thin military blankets. The American guard says it once. Calm, flat, routine. But in their ears it detonates, because they've been told what that phrase means. Propaganda films, whispered warnings. When the Americans take you, they'll take everything. The women's breath catches. Greta. 23 clutches her blanket tighter. She hears only one word. Strip. He repeats slower. Share. Your blanket. With him. Her brain refuses the translation. It's a survival reflex years in the making. The American's eyes flick over them. Quick. Embarrassed human. He looks away first. Drops a pile of folded wool on the mud floor. Over 500 Zalauser German POWs are in U.S. custody by this point, but only about 400 are women. Greta is one of them. That number alone means isolation, and fear that no rule can soften. The guard's breath clouds in the air. He's shaking too. They expected assault. They get blankets. When sie dich fassen. Bist du verloren? If they capture you, you're done for. The line echoes inside Greta's skull, louder than the wind clawing at the walls. He doesn't shout. Doesn't even look back. Just turns and leaves, boots crunching over frozen mud. For 30 seconds, no one moves. No one dares to unfold what he left behind. Greta's throat tightens. The smell of wet wool fills her lungs. The silence is worse than orders. Quick question. Comment below what city are you watching from right now, and what time is it? I want to see how far this moment travels. The women wait for the sound of boots returning, for the real command. Nothing. Only the moan of wind and the slow drip of melting ice. Then, footsteps again. He's coming back. But this time he isn't alone. And what happens next will rewrite everything they thought they knew about capture. The door slams against the wind. Boots crunch through the snow, fading fast. He's gone. The women don't understand. Not the words, not the silence, not the speed. The blankets still lie on the ground like traps. No one touches them. Greta stares at the doorway. The light from outside flickers across the floorboards, cutting through the cold. The air smells of diesel, wood smoke, and something metallic. Fear, maybe. Why did he leave so quickly? Why drop supplies and vanish? Her friend Ilse whispers, "It's a trick. They'll come back with cameras." Greta shakes her head, but she's not sure why. The officer hadn't smiled, hadn't sneered. Just left. Outside, the camp hums with mechanical life. Generators cough. A truck backfires. The American flag snaps in the wind sharp as gunfire. Inside, 40 women breathe like one animal cornered. The interpreter, barely 20, wearing a mismatched uniform, rushes in. His boots track mud. "Wait," he says, panting. He didn't mean it like that. But no one answers. He kneels beside the pile of blankets, lifts one. Steam rises from the damp wool. His voice cracks as he tries to explain. He doesn't speak German. He thought you were freezing. A freezing. Greta laughs once, short, broken. Her lips split. "We are," she mutters. Temperature logs from that week recorded 34 degrees F inside the women's barracks, colder than outside air. American guards rotated every 90 minutes to prevent frostbite. The prisoners had no such schedule. Still, the guard had dropped blankets instead of orders. Why? R had angst. Aber nicht vor uns. He was afraid. But not of us. The interpreter's words hang in the air like breath you can see. Afraid of what? Command? Misunderstanding? Himself. Ilse whispers. "He'll come back." Greta's eyes stay fixed on the door. "No," she says. "Someone else will." And she's right. The interpreter straightens, points toward the door. "Captain wants to speak to you." His voice trembles, less like authority, more like apology. Greta's stomach twists. The floor creaks under her bare feet as she steps forward. The blankets remain behind, untouched. Outside, the snow begins again, soft, relentless, blinding. And waiting beyond that door is a voice that will change the meaning of everything they just heard. The captain doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten. He just gestures to the interpreter, who looks like he'd rather vanish through the floorboards. Greta stands stiff in front of them, blanket around her shoulders, eyes hollow. The captain says something short in English. The interpreter stumbles through it, tripping over consonants. "Hey," he said. "You are to share the blanket with him." There it is again. With him. The phrase that sent every woman's pulse into chaos. Greta's jaw tightens. But then the interpreter freezes, blinks, and corrects himself. "No, sorry, not with him. Between you. Between the next woman. One blanket for two." A silence thicker than the cold fills the barracks. The captain watches, confused by the panic. He doesn't realize what those words triggered. Ink freezes in the interpreter's pen as he notes their reaction. Outside, the wind howls like an unanswered prayer. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Ilse starts crying, quietly, almost in shame. "Een woord," Greta whispers. Just one word. By 1945, the U.S. Army used more than 14,000 interpreters across Europe. Many had less than 2 weeks of language training, and none were schooled in the emotional landmines of gendered German. One wrong article, one pronoun misplaced, and 40 women thought their lives were over. Een woord. Nur een woord und die Hölle begint. One word. Just one, and hell begins. The interpreter's face reddens. He looks younger now, barely a soldier. "We didn't mean." He starts. What can he say? Greta watches him, eyes cold. "Then learn what you mean," she says softly. Outside, boots stomp in rhythm. Roll call, shift change, the mechanical pulse of survival. Inside, something quieter breaks. The women realize their terror came not from cruelty, but from confusion. Still, grief seeps in. For the trust they lost before it was ever offered. For the humanity propaganda had stolen. The interpreter sets his clipboard down, steps back toward the door. "You'll get soup in an hour," he mutters. He doesn't meet their eyes. The door shuts. The wind dies. Greta exhales for the first time in hours. The silence feels heavier than the fear. And somewhere far from this camp, in a dark Berlin cinema, the reel that taught her to fear those 5 words keeps spinning. Berlin, 2 years earlier. A projector hums inside a dim training hall. On screen, American soldiers. Brutal, laughing, always the same footage. A woman dragged, a man shouting. The message clear: if they capture you, fight until you die. Greta sits in uniform 21, ink-stained fingers clutching a notebook. The air reeks of cigarette smoke and hot metal. The officer paces the aisle, barking, "Never forget. Mercy is a lie." The film pops and flickers. Grainy faces move like ghosts. The soundtrack hisses. "Sie nehmen dir alles, selbst deinen Namen." They take everything. Even your name. The 8,000 of these propaganda reels circulated across Germany by 1944. Enough to poison an entire generation's instincts. Every warning drilled deeper: Americans are beasts. They mock the weak. They smile before they strike. So when the real Americans dropped blankets instead of orders, the women's minds couldn't compute it. Fear had been factory installed. Greta remembers the officer's words: "Trust nothing, especially kindness." She wrote it down once. Now she wishes she hadn't. The reel clatters to an end. Lights snap on. The officer steps forward. "Repeat after me," he commands. Better a bullet than captivity. 40 voices echo the line. Greta's throat tightens, but she repeats it anyway. Back in the present, the interpreter's correction keeps replaying in her mind. "Between you, not with him." Just language, yet it exposed the architecture of fear. Rage replaces grief. She wasn't terrified by a man's words. She was programmed to be. Statistics from Allied archives show over 90% of German women in POW or labor units reported expecting immediate violence. Less than 2% actually encountered it. Numbers versus nightmares. She presses her palms to her eyes, trembling. They made us afraid of ghosts, she mutters. Outside, the American guard hurries past the window. His shadow moves fast, deliberate. He's heading to roll call. If he's late, he loses a day's pay and his weekend pass. Orders, not shame, made him run. Greta almost laughs. Bureaucracy, not brutality. The wind slams the shutters. The film reel squeals in her memory like a dying animal. But old lies don't fade overnight, especially when hunger begins to bite. Hunger isn't loud, it whispers. It tightens the stomach until thoughts shrink to one question. When do we eat? A week after the blanket order, that question consumes the barracks. The women sit cross-legged on the frozen floor, bowls in hand, waiting. Diesel fumes mix with the smell of boiled cabbage. Steam curls against the ceiling beams. An American corporal wheels in a steel pot and ladles soup into their tin cups. Thick. Real. Greta stares at the surface. Carrots, potatoes, maybe even meat. Her hand trembles. Ilse whispers, "They're fattening us for something." Greta doesn't answer. She just counts spoons. 1, 2, 3. Each woman receives the same portion. Equal. Propaganda had promised the opposite. The enemy will starve you, use hunger to break you. But the numbers say otherwise. U.S. pod camps average 500 to 3,000 calories per day, sometimes more in winter. Civilians back in Germany were surviving on barely 1-800. Greta gulps once. The soup scalds her tongue. She doesn't care. The corporal notices their hesitation, frowns, and motions to the interpreter. Tell them. It's the same rations the men get. The interpreter repeats the sentence in halting German. The room still doesn't move. Because equality feels like another trick. Sie turn uns wie ihre eigenen. They feed us like their own. Ilse stares at the bowl. Why? She whispers. Why treat us like them? Greta can't answer. Her entire education says this isn't mercy, it's manipulation. But her body disagrees. Warmth spreads through her chest for the first time since capture. She looks around. Steam fogs the window panes. The sound of spoons scraping metal bowls fills the silence, a rhythm of disbelief. Outside, guards swap shifts again. One laughs. It sounds almost human. The interpreter lingers near the doorway, watching them eat. His voice drops low. They don't see enemies, he says. Just regulations. Regulations. Rules. Paper promises that somehow, against everything they'd been told, are being followed. But mercy tastes strange after years of warnings. And when the next order comes, medical inspection at dawn, that taste turns bitter again. Greta lowers her empty cup. Because kindness can't be trusted yet. Not when it comes from uniforms. Tomorrow, they'll learn that a measuring tape can terrify more than a rifle. Morning. Breath turns to fog inside the barracks. The door opens, and this time it's not soldiers, it's medics. White armbands. Clipboards. A box full of instruments that clink when they move. Medical inspection? The interpreter announces. Routine. Routine. The word makes Greta's pulse quicken. The women line up automatically, clutching blankets like armor. A medic unrolls a tape. Yellow, creased, harmless looking. It clicks as he extends it. Click. The sound slices through the silence. He measures height, waist, shoulders, marks numbers on paper. The smell of antiseptic fills the air, sharp enough to sting. But every click sounds like a threat. Every note, a verdict. Greta's turn comes. The tape wraps around her chest, tight. Too tight. She flinches. He pauses, startled. Sorry. He mutters, loosening the tape. She exhales. But too late. Fear has already done its work. In German, the women whisper. They're marking us. Mistaking care for control. By March 1945, U.S. records show 83% of female POWs received medical exemptions within 30 days. Every measurement here decides whether they work, rest, or recover. The system is clinical, not cruel. But the propaganda ghosts won't die. We're Dacton. Psi markieren uns. We thought they were marking us. The medic moves fast, precise. The pen scratches, paper rustles. He looks more embarrassed than authoritative. Sweat beads along his hairline. Outside, diesel engines cough to life. The sound vibrates through the walls like distant thunder. Greta studies his face. He's maybe 25, too young to be her nightmare. But still, her hands shake. The interpreter repeats in German, "He needs your measurements for uniforms." Uniforms. The word twists in her gut. She imagines striped cloth, numbered sleeves, punishment. But when the medic finishes, he hands her back the blanket gently. No number written. No mark left. He nods once. "Thank you." It's the first English word she understands without translation. He moves to the next woman. Click, scratch, fold. The same rhythm again and again. When the inspection ends, the medics pack up. No one speaks. Then Greta lifts her head. "Why?" she asks, this time in clear English. The medic stops mid-motion. Every eye in the barracks turns to him. His answer, whatever it is, will either shatter the last of their fear or prove every warning true. The medic freezes mid-motion. The other women stare, shocked that Greta, quiet, obedient Greta, has spoken in perfect English. Her voice is low, steady. "Why are you doing this?" The medic blinks. His glove squeaks against the clipboard. "Doing what?" "Measuring us," she says, writing things down. "For what purpose?" The interpreter looks lost. He's not needed anymore. Greta's accent is Berlin, clean, sharp enough to slice through the cold. For a heartbeat, the entire room holds its breath. The only sound, the slow drip of melted frost hitting a tin bucket. The medic sets his pencil down. His shoulders relax, not defensive, resigned. "Because," he says, "you're prisoners. And prisoners have rules." It's not the answer she expects. He gestures toward the clipboard. "We're fitting you for winter uniforms. You'll freeze in those." She studies his face, searching for irony. There's none. Only fatigue. By that winter, fewer than 0.08% of German civilian women could speak fluent English. Greta learned it in university, never imagining she'd need it for survival. Ich wollte wissen, ob er lügen kann. I wanted to know if he could lie. He doesn't. He looks like a man who's repeated the same routine in too many camps. His eyes are red from lack of sleep, not malice. The tape dangles from his hand, trembling slightly. Greta's throat tightens. The smell of disinfectant stings her nose. She realizes her fear doesn't match the scene. "I thought." She starts, but the words die. The medic's voice softens. "Whatever they told you, miss, that's not how this works." Her mind spins. If that's true, then everything, the films, the drills, the warnings, collapses. Years of conditioning crumble under one calm explanation. Outside, boots splash through melted snow. Somewhere, a generator hums like a heartbeat. Greta forces herself to look at him again. Then why care at all? He meets her eyes for the first time. Something flickers there. Pity, maybe understanding. "Because the Geneva Convention says I must," he says quietly. He picks up the tape again, scribbles one final note, and walks out. But that sentence lodges in her skull. "Because I must." She can't tell if it's obedience or something deeper. His words will echo for decades, long after the war ends. Days pass. Nothing happens. No punishment, no interrogation, no cruelty, just silence. The women wake, eat, work, and sleep under the same creaking roof. Outside, trucks crawl through slush. Inside, the world slows to the rhythm of breath and distant engines. At night, Greta lies awake, listening to the tick of a wall clock someone nailed crooked. Each second feels borrowed. The smell of soap and disinfectant lingers. Silence becomes the new fear. Still ist glimmer all schray. Silence is worse than screams. Because silence means waiting. For something, for someone. For the moment the illusion breaks. But it doesn't. The medics keep returning, always with the same routine: check pulses, Distribute ointment. Record temperatures. The interpreter translates only when necessary. His voice grows calmer too. One evening, Greta notices a strange pattern. They never touch without asking first, never raise their voices. Every act feels rehearsed, precise. By February 1945, American records list 27 female POW recoveries in Belgian holding camps. Each one medically documented, none abused. Numbers that look sterile on paper. But here, they smell like soap, taste like canned milk, sound like a pencil scratching quietly across a clipboard. Greta doesn't trust it. Not yet. But her body begins to believe before her mind does. When a medic hands her new gloves, she hesitates before taking them. Then she notices his hands, raw, cracked, bleeding from the cold. The gloves are spare. He nods once, steps back. She slips them on. The wool is rough but warm. Her pulse slows. For the first time since capture, she doesn't flinch at kindness. The interpreter watches from the doorway. "See," he says softly in German. Sometimes, orders are mercy. Greta doesn't reply. Her fingers flex inside the gloves. Outside, snow falls again, quiet as breath. But silence doesn't stay peaceful for long. Later that night, as lamps dim and guards switch shifts, a familiar voice echoes through the corridor. A guard's voice. Same tone, same phrase. "Share your blanket with him." The words drift into the infirmary. Every muscle in Greta's body locks. Not again, not those words. She turns toward the doorway, and this time, she's the one who must decide what they mean. The door creaks open. Cold air floods the infirmary. An American sergeant stands there. Shoulders dusted with snow, voice steady. "Share your blanket with him." Every woman freezes again, but Greta doesn't. She rises slowly, still wrapped in the wool gloves the medic gave her. Her breath fogs in the lamplight. Around her, the others glance in panic, eyes wide, hearts already racing. Greta exhales once. "Wet," she says in German. He means with each other, not with him. The words land differently this time, like a key turning in an old lock. The sergeant blinks, unsure why everyone looks terrified. "He's cold," he says, pointing toward a wounded German prisoner on a stretcher. One blanket per two. No hidden meaning. No trap. Just survival math. Greta translates clearly. "Ihr friert. Teilt die Deck." He's freezing. Share the blanket. And something inside the room shifts. Shoulders unclench. Hands move. Blankets spread. That night, 41 women share 20 blankets, plus the one covering the wounded man. The air fills with the rustle of wool, the slow cadence of breathing. No screams. No orders. Just warmth dividing instead of fear multiplying. "Ich vertraue ihm." I trust him. The phrase comes from Ilse, whispered like a confession. Outside, snow hisses against the roof. Inside, the women start to whisper stories, small ones. About food, home, even laughter. The interpreter sits quietly in the corner, eyes glistening. Greta lies beside Ilse, half her body pressed against another's. She feels the other woman's heartbeat, real and human. And then she remembers the medic's voice from days ago. "Because the Geneva Convention says I must." She'd thought it was duty. Now she wonders if it was something more. Because it's right. But truth hits late, but hard humanity wasn't regulation. It was choice. The warmth beneath the blanket feels heavier now, sacred almost. In that small room, enemies stop existing. Only survivors remain. Greta stares at the ceiling beams, listening to the synchronized breathing around her. For the first time, she isn't waiting for morning. She's hoping for it. Because for the first time since capture, she knows what safety feels like. And it smells like wool and breath, not fear. But she keeps the blanket, and she'll never let it go. Germany, winter 1948. 3 years since the camp. Greta is home. But home feels foreign. The city's bones are rubble, its silence heavier than gunfire. She carries one thing back with her. The blanket. It's folded tight inside her trunk, still smelling faintly of smoke and antiseptic. Every winter she opens the chest, touches the coarse wool, and remembers that night in Belgium. The night fear turned into warmth. Neighbors whisper when they see it hanging by her stove. An American blanket, they mutter. A trophy. A curse, she never answers. To her, it isn't either. It's proof of something that broke her propaganda and rebuilt her faith in rules. Rules that held when no one was watching. Between 1945 and 1948, over 11 million POWs were repatriated to a Europe still limping. Most came home to shortages, suspicion, and silence. Female records, almost none, lost or ignored. Greta keeps her record anyway. A square of rough wool. Each thread a contradiction. Kindness from an enemy. Discipline mistaken for mercy. At night, when the cold crawls through cracked windows, she drapes it across her lap. The fire pops. Candlelight flickers across her hands. Sie haben uns nicht gebrochen. Sie haben uns verwirrt. They didn't break us. They confused us. Confused them because compassion hadn't been part of the script. They had been taught to expect monsters, and found men obeying rules instead. Sometimes she dreams she's back in that camp, watching snow filter through the rafters, hearing the guards' boots retreat again. But now, the sound isn't fear, it's release. The blanket becomes more than fabric. It's a quiet rebellion against what she was told to believe. When her daughter once asked why she kept it, Greta smiled faintly. Because it kept me human. But she never told her everything. Not about the voice, the measuring tape, the trembling hands offering soup. Some truths feel too fragile for ordinary days. The wool warms her knees as she stares into the fire. Outside, wind claws at the shutters, whispering memories. Tomorrow she'll fold it away again, safe in its wooden chest. But someday, someone will ask again. And this time she'll tell them the full story. Of the night Mercy wore a uniform. Winter 1985. 40 years after the war. Greta's hair is silver now, her hands thin and veined. The blanket still lies folded in the cedar chest by her window, its edges frayed, the color long since gone to gray. Her granddaughter Lena sits beside her. Oma, she asks, why do you still keep it? Greta runs her thumb along the fabric. The wool feels rough, heavy with ghosts. For a long moment. She doesn't answer. The fire crackles. Outside, snow falls like ash. Because, she says finally, that was the first time someone followed a rule when no one was watching. Lena tilts her head. A rule? Yes. Greta murmurs. The Geneva Convention. The medic could have ignored it. The guards could have broken it. But they didn't. They shared blankets instead of taking them. Her voice shakes but doesn't break. That night, I learned that mercy can be discipline, and discipline can be mercy between 1945 and 1946. Surveys showed over 72% of post-war Germans distrusted all Allied accounts of humane treatment. Greta was one of the few who believed them, not because of propaganda, but because of memory. She looks at Lena and smiles faintly. They treated us like people. Even when we weren't sure we deserved it. Vielit war menschlichkeit die Ste rockst waff. Maybe humanity was the strongest weapon. Lena touches the fabric. It smells faintly of time, dust, cedar, old wool. Did you ever see him again? The soldier who said it. Greta shakes her head. No. But I remember his breath in the cold, and the sound of the tape snapping shut. Those sounds stayed longer than the fear. Outside, the wind howls through the cracked window. Inside, the fire throws shadows that look almost like uniforms. She folds the blanket one last time, presses it to her chest. Because of that night, she whispers, I never burned it. Then, softer, proof isn't in words, Lena. It's in what people do when no one's looking. She places the blanket back into the trunk. The lid closes with a soft wooden sigh. And in that silence, the war finally ends. For her, and maybe for all who remember. If you were in her place, terrified, freezing, convinced the worst was coming, would you have believed those 5 words meant mercy?